Hey, everybody, this is Chris McCabe of e-commerce Chris, and also one of the creators of the Seller Velocity Conference. I'm here today with one of our speakers who will be with us May 1st and 2nd in New York City for Seller Velocity, Joe Kovacs of Brand Guard. Joe, how you doing today?
Good, Chris, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's been an exciting year already. I'm sure you're already making plans to have some exciting examples for people in terms of hot stuff on your plate for 2024 for this spring. Conference is right in the heart of spring. Are there any new trends, anything different from last year, any specific stuff that you think answers burning questions that brand owners have? Since, as we've talked so often in the past, there's so much debate and confusion over controlling distribution channels and when you can submit brand registry tickets and IP claims and so forth. It's a big topic now, just as much as it has been. So,
I think we're
what's hot off
finding,
the press?
yeah, I mean, we're
Yeah.
finding that, there's always something new, right? New examples of ways that sell, bad actors are trying to game the system,
Mhm.
from a counterfeit perspective. Um, I think the consistent ones, issues around what do you do about, sellers with legitimate product that they're just reselling, competing against you. I think we are finding, different use cases for some of Amazon's programs that can help with that in addition to like standard, um,
Mhm.
standard protocols. I think especially in the field of brand protection, there's always it's kind of you build a fence and you build a way to try to take care of it, and somebody's always trying to find a new way to get around it.
Yeah. I mean, I've got kind of a cool update or news on my side because I'm dedicating at least part of this year to educating people way better after having seen all the brand registry revocations and all the outlandish things that lawyers told brand owners to send in, which was totally wrong. People sending in fake IP claims, or let's call them unsubstantiated IP
Right.
claims. And of course, as you and I talked, last fall as well, um, people are losing entire accounts over it. It's starting what you do every day, what you see every day is starting to creep more and more into our world.
Yeah.
And that's one reason we're really, really happy that you're speaking at our conference in New York on May 1st, because never has there been a time in all the years I've been doing this better than now for people to understand this earlier in the process simply
Right.
because of the consequences, right?
Yeah. We're seeing definitely what you're describing, right? Like, s- companies doing this the wrong way, and what happens, and then you kind of have to go backwards and clean it up, then start over and do it the right way.
Yeah.
And so, I like my the goal of my chat is, um, for companies that are looking to maximize not only Amazon but other channels, um, traditional retail, things like that, and
Hmm.
or they're already in both of those channels. Oftentimes, there's a lot of conflict that happens because of just competing pressures, and so, for mine, it's what are the kind of the top three brand protection strategies this year that's going to help unlock what I'm calling omni-channel growth, right? Like you can
Yeah.
maximize your online channels and still take part in your normal distribution, take part in your normal retail sales, or maybe you're wanting to you're an Amazon first brand and you want to expand that way. And we've seen people do that the wrong way and they totally destroy their Amazon business because
Well, yeah.
they've sort
Yeah.
of opened the floodgates, and now they have a bunch of reseller competing with them. So,
Yeah.
um, definitely right ways and wrong ways to do that. So,
Do you start just educating people on the SOPs you've put together, or are you customizing SOPs not across the board for all these brand owners, but for each individual one, depending on things they've done in the past that they may regret, things that they're planning on doing in the future that you're trying to stop them from doing?
right.
Or is it just, they're not educated enough on, you can't just go to Amazon and say, we don't know who these people are. They're not authorized to sell our stuff on Amazon. We want you to take care of it. I mean, is it just that simple?
It's, I love the classic lawyer answer. It depends. No, I think there are standard procedures and best practices and sort of legal strategies that,
Oops.
tend to work for basically any across industries.
Hmm.
And then, yes, like in specific industries, you might have, for instance, electronics or industries where there's a strong warranty claims, right? Like there's language you can use around that you don't have access to in this quite the same way if you're a beauty product or a,
Right.
an ingestible something, so there's that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I think each company tends to be different in how they get their products out to consume. Are they using large distributors? Are they just direct to consumer? I mean, we've seen a rise recently in um, more brands that are direct to consumer on Amazon and their website, and they're
Hmm.
running these. They run strong promotions on their website, and we're seeing like rings of sellers basically trying to game the promotions and
Interesting.
to get their hands on discounted product essentially directly from the brand, and now they're competing with them on Amazon. So um that's one that I've seen a rise in recently, or brands going, man, we're getting taken advantage of, and how do we stop this? How do we put preventative measures in place? So, that is kind
Right.
of a case by case basis as into terms of if you're dealing with certain issues, where are they coming from? And that can usually lead us to tailoring some of those strategies specifically to your business.
For sure. I mean, are you hearing more people saying these products are unsafe? We don't know who these are, what these products are. They don't do a test buy, but they report the resellers to Amazon for potential compliance violations. Is that one approach they use? Or are they focused mostly on, we got to do a test buy to confirm where they're getting it? And then we're going to figure out what our arrangements were and if anything was breached with that distributor, because that's where they found the product.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's for some companies, again, it's not that the inventory is due, they shipped it and sold it, but then again, what happens to it after it leaves our warehouse, touches the reseller's hand, we don't know. Um,
Right.
so there's those concerns about quality controls and what the customer experience is in getting those products. I think certainly, you know, Amazon is just not particularly helpful with, like the brand registry tools, the transparency, a lot of that is built for counterfeit specific. And so,
Right.
um, you
Right.
know, it's great usually, if you're dealing with that and you can take those steps to stop it. But then, it's not particularly helpful when some of these other cases of just your product is out in the marketplace in a variety of channels, and so it's easier
Right.
for people to get their hands on your actual products. Amazon doesn't want to stop that, and so brand registry is not the tool, unless there is, very specific cases like we're dealing with companies that sell overseas and the product is
Right.
slightly different. The packaging is different, different
Gray
language,
market.
different warning labels, those kinds of things. Even the
Hmm.
product formula is maybe a little bit different. And then that gets shipped back here into the US. Okay, well, that's a
Right.
physical difference with a product. Brand registry might be appropriate for that. So yes, like
Yeah.
it gets cumbersome, right? Do I do test buys? And then and so our goal for a lot of our clients is how do we find much more efficient ways to handle these kind of issues at scale. Um,
Yeah.
but certainly there's different tactics. You know, I'm finding just helping educate people on how to be smarter with their distribution practices so that it prevents, more of those leaks from happening in the market. We
Yeah.
just
Do
see
you think,
short-sighted decisions a lot, I guess.
well,
Uh,
speaking of short sighted decisions, do you see people who are aware of these brand registry claims and tickets they can file and complaints through Amazon's IP reporting tools, and they're trying to just not spend money on a service like yours because they think they found a workaround and that's not a workaround?
Sure.
And they just don't, they're either too frustrated to focus on it and don't understand the consequences, or they don't get the overall dynamics of it, or they get bad legal advice. I mean,
It happens
um,
frequently, right? Like,
right.
my yeah, my agency said do this. All I had to do was file these claims, right, and then go away, or just a misunderstanding, right, of what brand registry was meant to do, because somebody
Right.
told them like, oh, that's the same as brand gating if you get brand registered. Like
Oh God.
some of those kinds of miscommunications, just around like what is this tool meant to do? And then there's sometimes where you're thinking, well, it was meant to help me establish myself, brand registry in particular. It was meant to establish me as the content authority. How come these other guys could change up the content and I can't get it changed very easily? So there's some of those ways in which the program just doesn't always work as advertised that frustrates
Of
people.
course.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah, there's just a misunderstanding of maybe best practices around when do you use that, when do you not use that. And so that's a lot of our education piece. Hey, this is when this is appropriate. These are the situations where it doesn't work. Here's other ways to do that maybe go outside of Amazon, if so
Hmm.
that you're not potentially running afoul of legal trouble. Because we have seen an uptick of resellers
Oh yeah.
suing brands because of potentially false IP claims. And so,
Huge surge of
yeah,
that. I mean, I've talked to some of the people who are some of the attorneys that are doing those lawsuits, some of the resellers. That never used to happen 3, 4 years ago.
right.
Now it's pretty common, you know?
Yeah, there's there's whole law practices built now around playing what I call both sides, right? Like
Right, right,
they're
right,
playing for the brand sometimes and for the resellers sometimes, which gets obviously a little strange. But yeah, no, there's
right,
this it's cottage industry now, right? Of legal help just around Amazon and resellers and the battle between resellers and brands. And so
yeah,
yeah, we're much more common. And I think that's a lot of times is if you're not prepared and then you get, slapped with the lawsuit, or um, you're getting this demand from a lawyer, and it's like, well, what do we do now? And you're kind of caught scrambling. And so try to
right,
help educate. Here's how some of the pitfalls to avoid, like, um, so that you have a much higher chance of one actually getting the result you want, which is maybe getting those resellers removed, or getting, you know, yes, use it for the actual counterfeit seller so you don't get, if you're using it
right.
wrong, you can get blocked, right?
Differentiate. Yeah,
Yeah, we've seen companies where their whole ability to even use that part of, the IP claims gets shut down or greatly reduced because they've had that, a high rate of what Amazon sees as abusing the system.
for
Um,
sure. We're seeing a lot more brand registry revocations. And again, what we saw before that in years past was temporarily keeping you from reporting IP claims and not brand registry revocation. You might be able to correct me on this. I think that started later in 2022 into 2023, but
Sounds
now
about right.
that's a constant.
Yeah.
Now that's a regular thing. And it is unfortunate that a lot of sellers are hiring, they're either using in-house counsel that they've had for years to manage their brand legal issues, and they're getting poor advice from them, or they outsource or, hire outside counsel that has no expertise in this area. And they'll just either, maybe the pressure is from the lawyer to the brand owner or the other way around. And we see this with agencies too. Sometimes the agencies come to us and say, our clients, pressuring us hard to like report all these resellers, and we know there are potential ugly consequences. So it's interesting that it's come full circle with what we see, because we must imagine that you're in the trenches having these conversations every day with people who say, look, we tried to manage our supply chain the right way ourselves. It's too whack-a-mole. It's too administratively burdensome. It's too costly.
Right.
So how do you answer when they've already tried it? Let's say they know what to do
Sure.
and they just can't effectively police it, regulate it, unless they hire an army of staff or a whole outside company, but I mean, of course, if they were going to do that, they'd be probably looking at hiring you anyway. But how do you counsel them when they say, look, we tried to do this, it's not effective? And
Yeah.
then how are you going to be more effective than they will be?
Yeah. I think, typically it again, it kind of boils down to, do you have the right tools? Um, do you have the right processes, and do you have people to like execute your strategy? So a lot of times we're finding companies that, they're tasking their e-commerce team that already does 10 other things, and is feeling stressed. And here's an extra brand protection hat they have to wear. And again, that's not their expertise. So they're kind of scrambling for answers, but they're also
Mm-hmm.
getting blamed for what's happening. Like, I talked with a brand the other day. So they started directly on Amazon. um, they were in kind of a niche sports space that blew up. They rolled out these new product lines, and it was going amazing. And then they moved into distribution and working with distributors and selling to small retailers and those kinds of things. And that when they opened that door up, it opened the door for a flood of resellers to then compete with them on Amazon. And so now that the head of e-commerce is feeling stressed, his exec team's coming at him because prices are cheaper online and people
Right.
can't keep it in their stores. And so I think there's a lot of people, a lot of people we talk to, they don't know what to do. They're like, we've tried this, we've tried that, and it's not working. And so, I think for some, actually, hey, there is a legal strategy to use for some of these.
Mm-hmm.
And counterfeits always clear, right? Like that's illegal all the time. So
Right.
it's what do you do when it's kind of in this gray market? That's where a lot of companies we see have trouble. Um, and
Yeah.
they're maybe using a wrong tool, like um, yes, brand registry is one of those that they use in the wrong way. A lot of more traditional CPG companies are trying to throw a MAP policy, a minimum advertised
Right.
pricing policy at this. And it's not going to work, right? Like that's built
Right.
for only your good partners that that you can cut off if they start breaking
Mm-hmm.
pricing policies. Okay, yes, I can stop selling it to them. Okay, yeah, it works for those guys, but it's not going to
Right.
work for all these other sellers you don't know. And so that's where we are we've built some tools for companies now that want to manage this themselves. They've got the team to do it. And we've said, instead of just giving you software, like we'll actually coach you on the process too and give you the tools. So you bring the people to the equation. We're going to give you all of our processes and the tools that we use. And then, yeah, you can go manage this yourself. Um,
Right.
and so like we found that to be something that more and more teams are like, hey, that actually is helpful. that I can get coached in the process. I can get coached in the strategy of this. And so now I feel more confident in what I'm doing. Um, and then I have the tools to execute that at scale. And I call it efficient whack-a-mole, right? Like some of that element of
Mm-hmm.
whack-a-mole is never going to go away unless you can just sort of totally lock down your distribution. Um, but yeah, being able to do it much more efficiently, so you're knocking off more than are coming on, that's then that's more of a winning equation for some teams.
Or like you said, they have much more understanding around how to do promotions. Hopefully, they're not so gun shy that they stop doing those things and
Sure.
hurt their business in other ways. But they understand there's other factors to running promotions that could encourage a bunch of parties that they didn't previously expect to get in on it and try to resell their products from, gobbling up discounts, gobbling up product, and then putting it straight on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
And
maybe have
that's
some
where we see
procedures.
silos happening a lot in teams, right? You have
Mm,
an e-commerce team and then maybe you have a traditional sales team, and they don't usually
right.
talk very well together or
Enough.
work very well together. Uh,
Right.
that's I'm calling it a strategy like unified commerce. Hey, you're on the same team. Sort of need to understand what's happening in each other's world so that as a company you can get on the same page with your strategies. No, like, okay, let's not run that crazy promotion because yeah, it may give us a short-term sales bump, but it's going to totally destroy our online channels,
Of
Um,
course.
and so,
Yeah.
or hey, yeah, let's not sell this into TJ Maxx because of course that sounded great, but now I have an army of retail arbitrage people that got
Hmm.
my product at 50% of wholesale. Like, um,
Right.
okay, yeah, that's going to cause problems. So anyway, just get helping them teams try to get on the same page, understand what's happening in both of those worlds. And, of course, that's bigger businesses that have sort of those differentiated teams.
Yeah.
And then there's smaller ones that they blew up on Amazon and they're thinking about going into some of these other channels. And hey, here's some things to think about before you do that, so that you're going to protect like your golden goose, as you
Right.
kind of look to expand into some of these other channels and marketplaces.
Yeah. I mean, for Seller Velocity attendees in May in New York, I hope there are a lot of brand owners who spend a lot of time networking with you, talking to you. There'll be some 7-figure brands, there'll be some 9-figure brands, probably mostly 8. And there's a lot to protect and there's a lot to lose. And there's not a lot of room for error for any level of a seller. I mean, obviously, if you're selling 9 figures, the revenue you lose when you start losing things is higher than if you're a 7-figure brand. But the concepts and the principles are the same, which is you put a lot of effort into this, you built it.
Right.
Maybe you're only a year or 2 in, maybe you're 4 or 5 years in, but there's a lot at stake for everybody. And
Absolutely.
this due diligence is just as important as other types of due diligence, at least when we're focused on selling on Amazon, because you can't really afford that many mistakes. So maybe just the last question I'd have for now, and obviously come May, there'll be lots more to talk about. We could talk
I'm looking
about this
forward to
for
it, man.
hours.
I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of engaged participants at the conference who are going to have questions, and I think you'll like the quality of their questions based on previous years. But just the timing, I think, is extraordinary because this is such a pressing issue, and some brand owners have neglected this or have just said, "Oh, I don't know what to do about this. We'll just have our agency decide, or we'll hire somebody to decide." And it's something that the CEO, the ownership level, leadership level needs to know. But have you an example, maybe not an example, but can you think of a recent time where you pulled somebody back from the brink? They were just about to do something terrible. They were just about to abuse these tools, make mistakes, submit inaccurate, unsubstantiated info to Amazon, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you were able to coach them through, don't do that. Talk to me for a few minutes. I'll tell you what we're about. If you don't know much about us at BrandGuard, I'll tell you more about us. I'll tell you how we can fix this. And then you manage. I mean, who knows? Maybe they came back and said, thank you for stopping them from making an egregious mistake. Is that something that happens a lot? Is it happening more? Or are those occasions thankfully few and far between?
Well, I think we're still seeing a healthy amount of the cat's out of the bag and it's a mess. And now what do we do about it? But we definitely have been able to. We've had some conversations with brands that are like, "Hey, we're about to take this step into, multi-channel or retail, or we're like, what are some best practices?" We've been able to coach them and go, "Hey, you want to think about this, this, and this. You can put some of these things in place, put some controls in place. Not every sale is a good sale," kind of thing.
Right,
Just
right,
some
right.
general guidance that go, okay, yeah, that's going to help me shape my strategy. Or, yeah, that deal with TJ Maxx, it sort of sounded pretty good, but, you know, I'm doing all I can to go, that's a terrible decision. Don't do that. Like, unless this is just end of life, you're liquidating it and you don't really
Right,
care what
right,
happens, then sure,
right.
maybe that makes sense. So there's definitely been some of those conversations where we've been able to go, that sounds good in theory, what you're about to do, but don't do it. Like, or if you're gonna do it, go in eyes wide open. Here's what you need to, here's what you need to watch out for. And we
Exactly.
have, we're working with actively, on the client side. We've got several brands that have, even recently been able to start an enforcement process and get their mess kind of cleaned up from where it was.
Hmm.
And doing that themselves, they're being successful. So we've got, agencies and brands directly using some of our tools that are being successful with it. And then, a lot more where they're like, yeah, we want you to be our team. And because we've got a big mess and we want you to clean up. And we've seen people go from, winning the buy box 60% of the time across their products to winning the buy box, now 85, 90% of the time,
Right.
utilizing the strategies, right? Like, it's
Hmm.
not just like one magic bullet, but
Oh yeah, it
that
pays off. Doing it right pays off in the long run.
yeah,
Yeah.
it like
Yeah.
I just thinking about one client where we had implemented these strategies with them to go after their resellers. They're in the music industry, and they got hit with a lawsuit
Hmm.
by a seller that we had been actively communicating with, and that seller actually already agreed to take his product down. What happened was he got hit with a brand registry claim by another music industry brand. And I guess
Okay.
they just assumed, because we were talking to them at the same time, that our company
Uh,
and their company were connected. And so both of those companies got named in a lawsuit, and we were able to clearly show we didn't do that. And, within 2 days, that company was removed from the lawsuit because
mhm.
just, we could prove that we hadn't used that strategy of false brand registry claims or counterfeit brand registry claims. And so, those kind of things of just protecting people on the front end by not even going that way unless there's a clear, the clear pathway for it. And we're seeing,
Sure.
yeah, companies just avoid those lawsuits, avoid that hassle, and still be able to clean up their mess. So, um, it's these strategies are working in 2024. I guess that's
Oh, for sure.
the short answer, and I'm excited to share some of those. And yeah, if we can help prevent a world of pain for some brands and losing hundreds of thousands of dollars because of this, that's what gets us excited and why we do what we do.
And of course, we understand that as well because we speak to brand owners so much about preventing ASIN takedowns, account suspensions, preventing policy violations just to keep them out of trouble so that we don't have to have the conversation of we already did it. We're already suspended. We need your help to appeal it.
Right.
If you don't commit the offense in the first place, then there's nothing to appeal. So
When they say
that's
an
how
ounce
that
of
works.
prevention is, much better than a
Yep.
pound of cure or something like that.
Yep. So we know we're philosophically aligned with you in more ways than one. And
Absolutely.
this is great. Great stuff. There'll be more and more and more of this for 2 days in New York, May 1st and 2nd. Go to sellervelocityconference.com. If you have not already picked up a ticket and you're not already planning to join us, then please do, because you'll be talking to Joe Kovacs of Brand Guard in person, and he will have wonderful answers to these pressing, important questions like this, right? So,
Looking forward to it, man. I think
yeah,
you're this. I've been to quite a few other conferences, and I think just the more intimate setting and much more discussion based and those kind of breakout conversations that happen. I think that's where the magic is, and I think you guys
mhm.
have worked hard to try to create an atmosphere that takes advantage of those. So I think I'm excited, just even with that format for you guys.
Yep. Looking forward to it. We protect that. We guard that intimacy every year, and it's worked out pretty well. And springtime, May in New York could be a nice spring. We'll see what happens, but it's not winter at least.
Yeah,
So,
it's gonna be great, man.
well, thanks again. Yeah, thanks again for talking to us today,
Of course.
Joe. And again, you'll be able to interact with Joe in New York, and we will see you at the Seller Velocity Conference.
See you.
Talk to you soon.